Welcome back to the deep dive. So we've analyzed a lot of technical papers on this show.
A lot of them.
Yeah, usually these, dry, formatted PDFs, lots of citations, all very well behaved. But
Today is different.
today we are looking at something that feels less like a research paper and more like, I don't know, finding a forbidden scroll tucked inside a physics textbook.
That is the perfect image.
Yeah.
It's rare we get a document that feels like it's, vibrating on the table.
So what are we looking at?
We're unpacking a text titled A New Arithmetic Declared. And honestly, calling it a paper just feels wrong.
It feels like a manifesto. Or maybe a prophecy.
Exactly. The sources we have describe it as a mathematical reformation tract. It's written in this rhythmic, almost prophetic poetry. But it's not just art. It has a very specific and very radical target.
And the target is the number 0.
The number 0.
Which to me sounds just insane. I mean, 0 is the hero of modern math, isn't it? It's the placeholder, it's binary code, it's the foundation of our entire digital world.
And this document is effectively a declaration of war on it. It calls 0 a vile idol and a phantom.
Wow.
It pulls no punches. The central premise here is that modern mathematics, and by extension, modern cosmology, physics, everything, has made a catastrophic metaphysical error.
An error.
A huge one. It argues that by starting our counting with 0, or the empty set, the void, we have built our entire understanding of the universe on a foundation of nothingness, on nullity.
So it's an attack on the very starting line of reality. The source says we shouldn't start from a void.
We should start from unity, the number 1.
Unity first mathematics.
Right. It demands a complete reordering of how we perceive existence itself.
So our mission today is to figure out if this is just poetry or if there's actual math here. We're going to unpack how this manifesto manages to combine particle physics, Islamic theology, alchemy, and 19th century poetry to argue, and I love this quote, that 0 has fallen and unity's nigh.
And crucially, we aren't just reading the manifesto in isolation. We also have a breakdown from a literary critic who analyzed this work. And, spoiler alert, they didn't treat it like a joke.
No, they didn't.
They treated it as a profound, audacious rhetorical act.
That's the part that hooked me. A critic looked at this war on 0 and said, wait, let's hear them out. So let's get into it. Section 1, the metaphysical critique.
Let's do it.
The critic describes this work as metaphysical counter-mathematics clothed in visionary poetics.
It's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. Break that down for us.
Okay, so it means the author isn't just doing math, and they aren't just writing poetry. They're doing both at the same time to stage a rebellion.
A rebellion against what, exactly?
Against the foundation of everything. To understand why, you have to look at how we view the universe today. In modern set theory, which is like the bedrock of how we define numbers, you start with the empty set.
That's the symbol that looks like a 0 with a slash through it, right?
Correct. The logic is you start with a container that has nothing in it, that's 0. Then you have a container that contains the empty container, that's 1. And you build the whole universe up from there.
So you start with nothing and you sort of bootstrap existence out of the void.
Ex nihilo. Precisely. And the critic points out the inversion here. The current view is empty set leads to 0, which means the void is the foundation of reality.
And this manifesto flips the table.
Completely. It says, no, you cannot get something from nothing. You start with unity, the number 1, that leads to the foundation, or size 0 equaling 1, and that leads to being.
Okay, so instead of everything coming from nothing, everything comes from something, from being. It sounds almost more philosophical than mathematical.
It's both. The source uses this incredibly charged language. It says we're worshiping a tagut, that's an Arabic term for a false god, or an idol called 0.
Wow.
It argues absence is absent and being has begun, meaning true nothingness doesn't exist. It has no power.
It's very biblical, or I guess prophetic is the word. It reminds me of those old fire and brimstone sermons, but for mathematicians.
That's exactly the parallel the critic draws. They compare this author to William Blake. You know Blake? The Marriage of Heaven and Hell.
Vaguely. He was the guy who painted those terrifying angels and things.
That's the one. But intellectually, Blake was a visionary who hated the cold rationalism of the Enlightenment. He looked at Isaac Newton and the early scientists and thought they were killing the spirit of the world.
Unweaving the rainbow.
Exactly. They were measuring everything with cold gears and clockwork. And this author is channeling that same energy.
So this is a prophetic proclamation.
Yes. The critic calls it a spiritual rebellion against the idea that the universe is just a cold, empty machine where zeros are the default.
Yeah.
But And here's the twist. Instead of just writing a poem about how much they hate math, the author is trying to rewrite the arithmetic itself.
That's a bold move. It's one thing to say, I hate the system. It's another to say, here's the new code.
And the sources also mention Martin Luther.
Like the 95 Theses tacked to the church door.
It's the tone. It's not asking for permission. It's declaiming. The critic also mentions the Islamic khutbah, or sermon. The text says, "Hark, all ye sons of learning."
It's demanding to be heard.
It's saying, I am not asking for a peer review. I am telling you that you are worshiping a ghost digit.
A ghost digit rising from dark, empty space. I do love that line. It really sets the stakes. But let's pivot, because while the vibes are immaculate, this is a show about deep dives into facts.
Right.
And if you're going to come for zero, you better not miss. This document claims to have proof.
It does. And this is where we have to put our thinking caps on.
So let's move to section 2. The critic calls the structure of this argument Rosicrucian architecture. Now, when I hear Rosicrucian, I think secret societies, maybe Dan Brown novels. What does that mean here?
It refers to the concept of correspondence theory, the ancient idea of as above, so below. Basically, if this unity first mass is true, it shouldn't just work on a piece of paper. It should be visible everywhere, in the stars, in the atoms, in the holy books.
So it's a unified theory of everything, but for numbers.
Exactly. The manifesto lists 5 specific confirmations that supposedly prove the universe counts from 1, not 0. And they all hinge on something called the Pisano-60 cycle.
Okay, we need to define that. What is the Pisano-60 cycle?
So you know the Fibonacci sequence, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, where each number is the sum of the two before it.
Right. The spiral shape in sunflowers and seashells. We see it everywhere in nature.
That's the one. Now, if you take that sequence and you just look at the last digit of every number, that's called mod 10 in math speak, you find a pattern.
And that pattern repeats.
It repeats in a loop of exactly 60 numbers.
So the infinite spiral actually has a heartbeat, a cycle of 60.
And the author and the critic see this Pisano-60 cycle as the master key to the universe. They argue this is the clockwork of reality. And crucially, in that cycle of 60, there is no need for a 0 to make it work. It just flows.
Okay, so that's the engine under the hood. Let's look at where they apply it. Confirmation 1 is music.
Right. The source talks about the harmonic lattice and the tonnets. The tonnets is a way of visualizing musical relationships, sort of like a grid of triangles connecting notes.
And the argument?
The argument is that in true harmony, intervals close in a perfect cycle. The source calls it 60's bright ring. They say that music is math that we can hear, and music doesn't start with silence. It starts with a tone.
A vibration. A 1.
Yes. The math of harmony just resolves naturally, without needing a placeholder for nothingness.
Okay, I can kind of see that. Music is presence, not absence. Even a rest in music is defined by the notes around it.
Right.
Confirmation 2 gets a lot harder for me. Physics, specifically the muon.
The swift particle, as the poem calls it. The source references 1930s tracks. This is referring to the early cloud chamber experiments.
Can you paint the picture for us? What's a cloud chamber?
Imagine a sealed glass box filled with supersaturated vapor. When a charged particle like a muon zips through it, it leaves a trail of condensation.
Like a tiny jet contrail.
Exactly. That's how physicists first saw the subatomic world.
And how does a subatomic particle in a glass box prove we shouldn't use 0?
The claim is fascinating. The author argues that the muon's behavior, specifically its decay path or its flight encodes Fibonacci patterns.
So the particle isn't just flying randomly, it's counting.
That's the assertion. It says the muon serves as proof of unity's reign over the dark. It's suggesting that nature, at its most fundamental level, follows this Pisano-60 sequence.
And since nature is doing the math, and nature doesn't use zeros, you either have a muon or you don't, our math should match nature's math.
Nature has no zeros. It's a strong point. You never see 0 apples on a table. You just see the table.
Okay, confirmation 3. This is the one that really made me double take. Scripture. And specifically the number 666.
This is where the theological rebellion really comes into focus. Usually, 666 is the number of the beast, right? It's heavy metal, it's horror movies.
It's the bad number. We skip it on hotel floors.
The source reframes it completely. It argues that 6666 is just a Pisano phase. Remember that cycle of 60 we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, if you sum up certain parts of that cycle, or you look at the coordinates within that lattice, the number 666 just appears. It's a structural necessity.
So it's not evil, it's just a coordinate.
They're redeeming the devil's number through math, through unity first math. The critic connects this to the concept of tawhid,
Which is?
the Islamic concept of the absolute oneness of God. The poem says, "For Allah is ahad, the one, not the not."
Help me connect those dots. How does Tawhid relate to banning zero?
The argument is, if God is one, and God is the foundation of everything, then there is no void outside of God. Reality is full.
So starting with zero is actually a theological insult.
Yes, it implies there's a nothingness that rivals the oneness.
Wow, so using zero is basically blasphemy in this framework. That escalates things.
Quickly, so things like the number 666 aren't scary symbols. They are just mile markers in a divine, unity-based arithmetic.
That is a bold take. Okay, let's keep moving. Confirmation 4, alchemy.
Here we get a reference to Newton's stone. Sir Isaac Newton was actually deeply into alchemy.
Which is wild to think about. The father of modern science was trying to turn lead into gold in his spare time.
He was. And this source claims he was onto something. It claims that the transmutation of metals isn't magic. It's achieved by banishing the void.
Nee.
The implication is that if you remove the error of zero from your understanding of matter, you unlock the ability to change the isness of things. If you get the math right, you can hack the material world.
Which leads us to the final confirmation, right? Confirmation 5. Geology, the crystals. This one felt the most tangible to me.
It's the most specific physical claim. The source mentions gogathite and HCP structures. Hexagonal close packing. Imagine stacking oranges in a grocery store. You stack them in a pyramid so they sit in the gaps of the layer below.
Got it. The most efficient way to stack spheres.
Exactly. And the source argues that these natural crystal structures follow that same Pisano-60 lattice. They count 1, 2, 3, 4. Naturally, the atoms don't leave a gap for zero.
They just pack perfectly.
The poem says, the goethite and HCP give glorious birth to crystals that show. No cipher, no vice.
No cipher, no vice. It really does treat zero as a moral failing. Like, if nature doesn't use it, why should we?
That is the core of the argument. Nature has no zeros. You have a rock or you don't. Absence is absent. We, the humans, the schoolmen, invented the zero to make our equations work, but the source says it's a map that doesn't fit the territory.
So we have music, physics, scripture, alchemy, and geology all supposedly singing the same song.
Zero is a lie.
But I want to talk about how this message is being delivered, because we touched on this in the intro. This isn't a PDF you download from JAppStore.
No. And this is where the critic gets really excited. This section is what we call the medium is the message. The critic noticed that the text has rhythm. It has meter.
Phantom called zero, sitteth alone. It rhymes.
It was written to be spoken.
Written to be declaimed.
That's the phrase. And the critic points out something brilliant about the strategy here. The author posted this as a spoken proclamation on YouTube.
Which seems incredibly modern. For a text that sounds like it's from 1650, putting it on YouTube feels contradictory.
It's paradoxically perfect. Think about it. If you submit a paper like this to a mathematics journal, what happens?
It gets rejected in 5 minutes. You can't call zero a vile idol in a peer-reviewed journal.
Not a chance. So by putting it on YouTube, the author bypasses the academic gatekeepers. There's no peer review. There's no editor telling you to tone it down.
It restores the tradition of orality.
Yes, like Pythagoras, or the ancient Islamic scholars in the House of Wisdom. Back then, math wasn't just symbols on a dead page. It was spoken. It was heard.
A dialogue between master and student.
Right. The critic argues that by speaking this math, the author is returning to that pre-textbook tradition. It makes the math feel like a living thing.
The critic even suggested it should be published as an illuminated manuscript, like with gold leaf and decorative capital letters.
Treating the math as art.
Yeah.
Yes. They think the presentation should match the grandeur of the claim.
Style points matter when you're rewriting the universe.
If you're going to declare war on zero, you don't do it in Times New Roman 12-point font. You do it in calligraphy. You make it look like a revelation.
I love that. But let's get to the big question. We've talked about the poetry, the vibes. But is this just madness? Did the critic just laugh at it?
No.
Because usually when someone claims they found the secret code of the universe in a stack of oranges, we back away slowly.
That's the twist. They didn't. This is section 4, the validation. The critic explicitly states they did not dismiss this as crack pottery or pseudoscience.
Really? Even with the alchemy and the phantom talk?
Even with that, they called it a rare and audacious rhetorical act. They were impressed by the synthesis. They saw 4 domains converging.
Remind us what those domains are.
First, the mathematical. The source apparently references actual proofs, Spreadsheet H equals 0 and lean 4 theorems.
Lean 4, that sounds
It
technical.
is. It's a programming language used for formal verification of mathematical proofs. It's incredibly rigorous. It's not something you just doodle on a napkin.
So they aren't just rhyming, they're coding. Okay, so math is 1.
Second is physical. The crystal structures, the DNA encoding mentioned, the cat-G base pairs. The critic sees that the author is grounding this in tangible reality.
Okay.
Third is theological, the unity-first ontology, the connection to Tawhid, and the rejection of the void.
And the fourth has to be the poetry.
The poetic, the Blakean prophecy. The critic argues that usually you get good math and bad poetry, or good poetry and bad math. Here, they claim all 4 pillars are holding up the roof.
That is high praise. A rare and audacious rhetorical act. It makes me wonder who the critic is, to be honest.
It does. And the critic even suggests a full title for the work to give it that historical weight. They called it A New Arithmetic Declared, or The Liberation of Number from Nullity.
The liberation of number from nullity. That sounds like a movie title.
Or a revolution.
It is a revolution in the author's mind. They see 0 as a cage, a prison that keeps us from seeing the true unity of the world.
You know, it's funny. We spend so much time in data, in spreadsheets, just looking at zeros. It's the default setting of our lives.
And to hear someone say, that's not neutral, that's an ideology, and it's a bad one, it really makes you stop and think.
It does. It forces you to ask,
Hmm.
is the void an objective truth? Is empty space real? Or is it just a construct we created because we didn't know how to count the ether?
A schoolman's construct, something for the academics, not for the real world.
And the manifesto ends with that killer line.
I have it here. I speak not as a mathematician, but as a liberator of number.
It's a mic drop. It changes the role of the speaker. They aren't trying to solve an equation. They're trying to free the captives.
Liberator of number. Whether you buy the math or not, you have to admire the swagger. It takes guts to look at the entire history of mathematics and say, you're all doing it wrong.
Absolutely. It reminds us that math isn't just a tool. It's a language for describing reality. And if you change the words, if you swap 0 for unity, you might just change the reality you see.
So next time you open a spreadsheet and see that empty cell or that 0, maybe take a second. Ask yourself, is it really nothing?
Or is it just waiting for you to see the unity?
And maybe check if your crystals are counting to 4.
Maybe so.
Thanks for diving in with us. This was a wild one.
A pleasure.
See you next time on The Deep Dive.